Shalom, everybody. Welcome to the Unexpected Cosmology. And just 1 week ago, I went on to Paul's station, Understanding Conspiracy. And oh, hold on here. We're having all sorts of fun tech issues today, aren't we? Um, and yeah, I guess I had YouTube on over here and it was playing back, as you guys know. Anyways, it's good. I'm happy. I'm excited that you're here on camera today, Paul, and you're looking good as always. I've noticed that I've got this like streak of white going down here. I'm getting gray really fast, and but you're looking pretty good yourself over there.
Oh, thank you very much. I do have a bit of a receding hairline, but I'll be going grey next. I get the odd grey beard, so I'm not too far behind, Don't worry about that.
All right, okay. I think this happened since my daughter was born a year and a half ago, and it's just how. By the way, how many, if you don't mind me asking, where are you at in life? I mean, you've got children, right?
Yeah, I've been with my wife, married for a year, but I have been with her for 5 years. We have a 2-year-old son. He just turned 2 last November, and we're contemplating having another. Still debating it because we've got some things we need to sort out first, moving house and other things like that. But he's aged me terribly. I'll say that much, as kids do. So if I do have another Noel, I'll probably end up going grey just like you, I imagine. But yeah, it's worth every second, honestly. It's
two
amazing.
year 2-year-olds, it's a fun age, but it's even funner trying to put them to bed. And I think if I'm not mistaken, maybe you had to put your children to bed before this because you're on England time.
Yeah, so it's just gone 8 p.m. for me. I'm blessed. My son sleeps through the night, full 12 hours from 7 o'clock till 7 in the morning every night, no problems whatsoever. Sometimes maybe it may take him a bit longer than an hour to fall asleep, but usually by 8 o'clock I'm free to play and do what I need to do in the evening. So that's why I'm here, and that's why I always time it after 8 p.m. for myself. But during the day, I'm full time. I'm a full time stay at home parent, self employed. I'm with him all the time, just doing his thing. So
All right. Well, I'll have you, I guess, give your official introductions here. And I think for most people, you have a much larger YouTube channel than I do. And in fact, a large part of my audience, I'm not going to assume everybody, but a large percentage of my audience are huge fans of yours. I mean, they've been saying for months, you got to go talk to Paul. You got to go talk to Paul, And then I was going to do a sneak attack. I was going to go secretly onto your channel, not announce it to anybody, because I just wanted to see, my peeps and stuff kind of like see me on there. But I think you announced it a few days before, and they came in like all panicking, like, "What's this I hear, Noel? You gone?" So, anyways, it's fun to have you back, and just tell us about yourself to the one or two people out there who have never heard of you before.
yeah, so I run a YouTube channel called Understanding Conspiracy. It was kind of a brainchild at the end of university from 2014. I have an art degree in fine art, and for those 3 years, from 2011 to 2014, I was what's the word? Waking up, is that the phrase we'll use? Discovering the deceptions and so forth. That was my trigger point time. It was around about the time the end of the world was supposed to happen, with the Mayan calendar coming to an end. That was kind of my intrigue moment. It's like, oh, what are these people looking at that's making them say this? And it was just one thing after another after that, and I just fell down into the abyss of occult knowledge and everything. But at the same time, I was doing a degree in fine art, so most of my artwork became about conspiracy, and everything around it, basically. And by the end of it, I ended up with this channel, which was created as an end of year art project initially, discussing conspiracy theories and trying to get meta about the world of conspiracy, you know what I mean? And the groups involved and the factions involved. And I kind of had this phrase at the beginning, it's the right information in the wrong hands. Like all this stuff seems to be true, but the people at the time talking about it were too sensational, too crazy looking for people to take them seriously. So I really wanted to come in back then and kind of like set an example of if you want people to take you seriously and actually pay attention to this important information you keep trying to share, you need to up your game a little bit. You need to say it in the right way. So that was my channel originally based on that topic. And it wasn't long after that I suppose I became a Christian. I was very much swimming in the New Age world prior to this, doing a lot of occult studies, very much. I won't call myself a hippie New Ager or a Gnostic, to be honest, but I was definitely more in that realm than I was in the Christian realm when it came to interpreting conspiracy theories. But I kept bumping into the wall of the Christian biblical historical narrative when doing my research. I just didn't want to go through the door to that part early on because I was maybe scared of what I would find. I thought I could find all the answers through the occult and through other means, through worldly means. And I was very much into the typical art student psychedelic exploration. I was a walking, talking stereotype more than anything during that time, and but by the end of my degree, left with this channel with no direction in life, it got to the point where I was I didn't know what to do next. I didn't know who I was. I was burnt out from heavy psychedelic use, drug use, thinking I was a god with collective consciousness type thinking, you know what I mean? And with all this knowledge about the corruptions in the world and kind of nihilistic in a sense, what am I supposed to do with all this information? What's the point in anything? Pretty much at rock bottom. And I managed to basically, I'd heard many of the Christians giving their point of view on why we have so much corruption in the world, and I decided to take it seriously, and I started swimming in the biblical perspective, and it answered a lot of questions very quickly. And it got to a point where I asked God, help me. Okay, so if it's true, if this is what's going on, save me, because I am lost. I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm at the end. I'm at the end of my ability to even process things emotionally anymore. Just help me. And he did. And from that day, my life has done a full 180, and I lost all my addictions and my wants and desires to do those things over the past 10 years. I've been sober now from any type of drug other than nicotine and caffeine for 10 years. And I quit nicotine fully 2 years ago, well, about a year and a half ago now. Just cut that out completely after taping myself off at using an electric cigarette. And like I said, I'm married, have a kid now, and I've never felt like I have more purpose and a reason to keep going than I do today, And
you say all this as I'm drinking my coffee right now. I'm still on my nicotine addiction.
Yeah.
If I start another YouTube channel, I'm thinking of going with the name like Bible Brew or something like that.
Nice. I still drink coffee. Don't get me wrong. Like that's where I'm at, And I right now I'm drinking green tea begrudgingly for health reasons more than anything. So I'm getting to that age now where I have to start considering these things. But I'm talking about the hardcore, heavy drug use was left behind for a new life,
Yeah, no, I want to talk a little bit about the like DMT and other things like that. But one thing before we move on, one thing that struck me with what you said, I was wondering what your attraction was to Christianity, to the Bible, because you're coming in, you're saying 2012, 2014, which was, it seems to be a lot of people who went through that. I was at kind of a second wave. I was at the tail end of that. I woke up around, it was in early 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And that was during the entire, the Star of Bethlehem, the Revelation 12 sign was coming up in a couple of years. And it was kind of through that woke me up. But it seems like a lot of people did come into the truther movement. Now you're saying you went through more of a Gnostic doorway. And you're looking, Bob, one of the things you said about it was that it answered your questions about the state of the world. But what would you find would you say that your attraction to the Bible was answer solved, truth? I mean, what was the attraction to Christianity?
I wasn't raised a Christian, so I don't really speak Christianese. So when people listen to me, I don't sound like a traditional Christian because it was never part of my life growing up. I was a relatively non-religious child. I had a childhood where it wasn't really talked about. It just wasn't even a thought, And I wouldn't say my parents were like dogmatic atheists or anything either, or anything like that. My mum maybe humored and went along with things like horoscopes and dream catchers or stuff like that loosely, but even then I wouldn't call her like in any way a new ager or anything like that, you know. It's just typical northern working class family life, just without any religion involved, you know. And so for me, it was alien to even consider it when I first went into the conspiracy world. I thought the answers were in, like, it was maybe aliens or interdimensional beings or something that were, and consciousness or collective consciousness through Jungian psychological archetypes. Or I was in that kind of world. You know, it could be answered through scientific means or psychological means rather than it actually having anything to do with anything really spiritual. But through my exploration at that time, and through my life with psychedelics, and I always did them with a pretty analytical mind. I took them to not just to have a good time. I wanted to see what was actually going on what were people talking about when they took these drugs. Is that real, you know? And when the first time I did a psychedelic drug I was actually 16, maybe 17, just borderline. I was very young, and I did something called salvia divinorum. Now, salvia is I didn't know this at the time, because it was legal and you could buy it in like corner shop head shops over the counter. So you'd think a legal drug would just be harmless, you know. It turns out after the fact, I found out it's probably on par with, if not more powerful than dimethyltryptamine, which is DMT. And I didn't realize I was taking such a powerful, potent thing at that age. But that shocking experience, I would say, is what set me in motion to questioning the rigidity of reality from a scientific viewpoint, going more into the, I've seen some things that I can't explain. I need to find answers. So that kind of, so from my early teens, I kind of went into that mindset of exploring consciousness and analyzing it through a psychological, semi-pseudo spiritual way. And that's because that's all I understood. I didn't have any biblical foundation or any foundation of any type of religious thought to do anything else with it, you know. So I ended up smoking a lot of cannabis. And when I got to university by the age of 20, 21, 20, around about that time, and after going through college studying arts, you know, and I managed to get my hands on harder things. And it was, like I said, it started with psilocybin, LSD tabs, and then finally we got to dimethyltryptamine, you know. And every time I was doing these things, it was for the purpose of, I want to know what's going on. Like, is the spiritual realm real? And it answered that question. Yes, it is, but I didn't know what to do with it. What do I do now? You know, I know there's a spiritual realm there. There's entities there. There's clearly, the reality is not just as black and white as I thought it was, and I don't know what to do with this information. And conspiracy kind of, a lot of it is based on people who take these psychedelic drugs interacting with specific beings and claiming that they have answers for you of who we are. And the answer was always, you're a god. You're just God, kind of pretending that he's not. He's forgotten that he's God so he can experience what it's like to not be a god. That kind of answer was always coming through the forums, through the philosophers in this realm, through the psychonauts, as they call themselves. The messages were always the same. They were always going to say, we are a god. I am God, you know, and we're all God together, type of thing. But it was never giving me any actual fruit in my life by going along with that philosophy. My life just seemed to get worse and worse the more I lent into that kind of ideology. But I was always seeing Christians online, and even I suppose Christians in my life, although there's few and far between in England this day and age. But they always seemed to be going on the up. Everything was always getting better for them. It was complete opposite to what, you know, and it seems like for all the enlightenment I think I have, why is my life getting worse and worse? You know, it's so, I always knew the Christians must know something I don't know, I suppose. It was always at the back of my mind. But again, there was this loud contingent during that time period of Christian conspiracy truthers online spreading the gospel, the basic gospel, and also explaining why the evil's in the world because of the devil, basically, you know, and this agenda, and all these secret societies worship Lucifer. Everyone knows the typical Albert Pike quote, you know, about how the true Lucifer doctrine is what we truly follow, and we need to slowly get the masses on board and all these type of things. And again, it's always that niggling thing in the back of your mind. Well, if they believe in Lucifer, should I believe in God as well? Like, because it's kind of, they're not denying it, you know. And like I said, so I was at that point where I'm gonna have to just see where it leads. So I started studying the Bible, biblical history, and because I didn't know the rules of engagement necessarily for what it means to be a Christian, and because I don't really know how to act like one, because I wasn't raised like that, um, my attempts to go to churches pretty much failed because I think they were confused about the things I was talking about. And I was naturally also, as well as just the normal books, that most people read, I also was willing to look at things like Enoch, you know what I mean, which most people reject outright straight away anyway. And so the concepts like the Nephilim and giants and angels mating with human women, a lot of that for me, as coming from an atheistic, relatively secular viewpoint, answered a lot of questions. It's so, the typical, why is God a cruel, vindictive, evil God who would flood the whole world? Explain that one, Christians. Turns out there was a very good reason for it. And if anything, it was a mercy more than anything. It's a good job he did do that. Otherwise, we'd be in a pretty bad situation. And again, it was one impactful realization after another just by swimming around in the biblical narrative. And it led to where I am today. And most of my channel is a study on these things. So
your story is very typical to what see, as you know, Paul, I grew up Christian. I grew up in a PK, pastor's kid in a parsonage. And I see those two distinctions between people who came into it later in life versus those who grew up in it. And for the people who grew up within, as you call it, Christianese, which I thought was a little funny, there's a lot of these hurdles to get over, these doctrines, these you're thrown into a box and like, okay, you got to believe these doctrines, boom, 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 boom. And a lot of traditions of men, other things like that. And it's hard to push past that propaganda, whatever you want to call it. And so what happens is a lot of people like you, they come in later in life, they're able to circumnavigate all of that and come in with these fresh eyes. They're not taught, all these traditions through the years based on, whether your denomination is Baptist or Pentecostal or whatever it is. And you come in with fresh eyes and you see it. So you have this heads up above a lot of other people who are sunk down in their belief systems. They can't get past it. Right. But what happens is, as you mentioned, you come into the church and you want to feel accepted in the church, and everyone else is like, who is this? What in the world? You're crazy talking about, Nephilim, right? All that kind of stuff. But before I say this, I'm going to throw a couple questions at you, and I hope these aren't curveballs or anything like that. I'm asking you specifically because I get asked this question all the time, and I think this is a really good insight into how somebody thinks. And so the first is a famous question in the Gospels when Yahusha is before Pilate and he's about to get crucified, and he's trying to figure out, who are you, right? And he throws up both hands. He says, famous question, what is truth? All right. And very postmodernist phrase, but for you, what is truth?
I mean, ultimately the only thing I've found which is repeatable is that God is real, and that's as true as I can probably get. And over and over again through my own experiences, personally, spiritual experiences, I know that he's a loving God, and he did save us. He wants to save us. He's not a cruel, vindictive prison keeper like a lot of people want to make us out to be. And there's so much lies from the world that it's difficult to hold on to anything else other than the basic gospel that he sent his only begotten son to die for our sins, and to save us and give us a way back to it. Now, again, I know many people can argue over theology and the specifics of that and the right way to do that, but I don't get into that personally.
So the second, so you and I are obviously on the same page. We would say we come from a biblical worldview. The Bible is true. You could phrase it like it is the testimony of Elohim, of Elohim. All right. It is his word, right? He's testifying to something, right? All right. So second part is, how do you determine what truth is? So both you and I, we're coming off of the springboard of, okay, we have a biblical worldview. The Bible is true. And let me just say real quick, because it's interesting, coming from, you had mentioned you came from a Gnostic worldview when you came in 2012, 2014. And the one thing I love about the Bible is that you go anywhere all over the world, you see these common themes. You see the worship of the serpent. You see the Gnostic lie, the delusion, which is that you are your own God. Correct? I mean, that you can save yourself ultimately. You can become like Allahayam. You see that all over the world. You see the flood deluge. You see the Great Deluge. You see the Tower of Babel. You see giants, right? The Nephilim and so on and so forth. You see the alien incursion. Well, what's amazing is that the Bible, of course, is the only one that for me satisfactorily answers those questions and actually exposes those things. It exposes, them as the ancient aliens as the Watchers. It shows the giants, as as the children of them, right? And you see, all these things, right? It's incredible how it's the one book that ties all these things together. So my next question is, how do you determine truth when you're researching something? And you have like phenomenal research on the clowns, the clowns are Nephilim, right? How, when you're looking at stuff, how do you determine what is truth?
Well, look, I'm always open to be proven wrong about many things as well. I tend not to hold too steadfast to details, but I hold on to the overarching truth that it's in God's hands, and asking you shall receive is something I through evidence seems to be working for me. I asked God to save me, He did. I asked God to explain to me what's going on, and over time things do seem to get revealed. Now, I'm not trying to go through a gnosis type version here of some kind. It's
Sure.
I'm always testing all things and holding it against what the biblical narrative actually says, but it's a difficult question to answer. No, it really is, because I'm of the mindset through my research, I've always been like this, is I'm willing to take on every possible perspective for a particular angle or theory. I like I said, I got you on my channel to share your view on the Millennial Kingdom, for example.
Yeah.
But I also got other people on who maybe have alternative theologies and worldviews to share their work on the particular topic too, because I want to take it all in. I want to know it all. So when the truth does inevitably be revealed or is admitted or becomes obvious, I won't be blindsided. That's me. That's me. Maybe I'm a control freak or something deep down, and I just have to get a grasp of something or everything, so I'm not taken by surprise. Maybe I just don't like surprises, and that's something about me. But I'm always willing to humor something as truth to its inevitable conclusions, so I can fully understand the concept. So it's a hard question for me to ask, because many times I believe many things to be true which have been proven maybe wrong or questionable. So that's why I don't hold on to much other than God has my best interest at heart, and just trusty that He has a plan here, and that's what it always really comes back to. Everything else for me is a journey. I suppose it's fun in a way. I enjoy researching these things and hashing out all the ideas and speculating as much as possible. And I believe, there's things I do believe which I would hold as truth, like my theory on the clowns, for example. I think I've made a strong enough case to say, yes, this seems to be what the clown really is a symbol for, and this seems to be where it actually came from. But there are plenty of people out there who would disagree with me, and maybe they're right. Maybe they're right to disagree with me. Maybe I'm just delusional. Who knows? But
no,
yeah.
I'm not trying to put you on the hot seat here. I
know.
It's a question people ask me all the time. What is truth, and how do you determine what truth is? Even if you can agree on the biblical worldview, how do you determine what? So I was just kind of curious what your thoughts were, and yeah. So getting on to the clowns, because I was actually going through, and it was interesting because I see that your channel, it stopped like right around 2017 or the whereabouts 2018 or somewhere in there.
I think it was 2018. I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and then there was a 5-year gap, and you just jumped into it again. And I was, going through today and reviewing some of your old material, and something that struck me with the DMT, because this is something back in 2018, right around the time you left, that I was putting people don't know this about me, Terry, but I was putting a lot of research into DMT. And I just wanted to share this really quickly and just get your thoughts on this. This was
sure.
I haven't read this book in almost a decade, but maybe you guys can see this on camera here. It got fuzzy now on me. It's called Mystery School in Hyperspace. So as soon as I saw the title, because I was, researching mystery schools, I was really into the mystery schools. And as soon as I read this, I'm like, I got to read this, right? Well, he has this whole section on the space age. And he goes through about how, DMT got started with the CIA was pushing it and all this kind of stuff. And he talks about how there's a space connection. Now, this guy is totally on board. He's not exposing how space is fake or anything like that. But he was saying that the entire space race in the 1960s was actually, it was lining up with the DMT movement. And so here's like one of the here's a quote from someone who was doing the DMT test in the 60s, and this is what he said the DMT experience was like. He said, "The whole room is filled with spirits. It makes me dizzy. Now it is too much. I feel exactly as if I were flying. I have the feeling this is above everything, above the earth." And then he goes, "It is comforting to know I am back on earth again. Everything has a spiritual tinge to it, but it is so real. I feel that I have landed." And he starts to go through the writer about how over the next decade, we see the sequence of events with DMT of space, orbit, and return to earth, or the intake, high, and the landing. And then he starts quoting Neil Armstrong's actual words when he lands on the moon, when he says, "Houston Tranquility Base here, the Eagle has landed." And then they say, "Roger, Tranquility, we copy you on the ground. You've got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again." And anyways, he goes through and he talks about how it was actually designed, like even well, let me quote this here. I had it. Now I don't have it anymore. Whatever. It doesn't matter. But I thought that was kind of cool. Oh, he talked about all the broadcasters and stuff, that they were actually reading from these scripts that were designed as a ceremony to usher in, this kind, a DMT type ceremony. I found that really interesting, which brings me back to 2016 when we had all these creepy clown sightings. And there was, you had mentioned in one of your interviews that it was a ceremony. I think you used the word ceremony, and maybe you could elaborate on that a little bit. What do you think that was? What was the purpose of that media event? Because I remember that. I remember when all those creepy clowns were showing up.
Yeah. Well, it's based on the philosophy from much research that nothing gets to be on that box in the corner of the room unless they want you to see it. There's a purpose behind everything they show on it. And what caught my attention when I saw the creepy clown sightings of 2016 is that every news station of every state and even country was covering it. And that's odd for such a trivial event. If it was just like a localized event, maybe in a couple of states here and there, or maybe one state, then fair enough. That local news station could cover that event and it wouldn't be neither here nor there, just an elaborate prank or something. But the fact that it was so widespread across the entirety of America and even into England as well, in the Western Hemisphere, and the news was so hyper focused on making sure you knew about it. I knew straight away, okay, so the clown is a symbol for something. It means something to these people. It's not just a throwaway gag or something spooky for Halloween. They want you to know that the Nephilim are mysteriously appearing, is what I later discovered. But at that time, it was just a symbolic representation of clowns are going to mysteriously just appear, And in a way, I kind of humor that it was maybe kind of like a predictive programming event of some kind. What they were trying to do is get people prepared, maybe for a Days of Noah situation, where the Nephilim would return. So symbolically speaking, it's kind of creepy clown sightings. It's the Nephilim returning type thing, and people are seeing clown-like creatures appear out of the shadows or in an ethereal sense. And that was my first clue that the clowns had something to do with the occult. That was my first clue, and that's what led me to do my research and to actually create this year-long thing. Just to backtrack a little bit, you said that I had a 5-year hiatus. So I did start the series in 2016 in October, not long after the creepy clown sighting event, just hashing it out. I didn't have any conclusions then. I was just talking out what I'm thinking about it. And those early videos, I'm not very proud of them. They're all over the place. I had a very different attitude then as well. I was quite hot-headed, and a new Christian, quite all over the place with my thoughts. Didn't have a solid foundation yet of even what I believed, and I was also embroiled in a I don't want to say the word, but say minor attracted persons, MAPS, shall we call them that? Okay, these people at the time were pushing that agenda that it's okay to abuse children. And I was calling them out on my channel and then getting attacked en masse by, I guess, people who were attracted to children. So I was embroiled in this nasty mindset of war, So my attitude kind of and my tiredness was coming through a lot in those early videos, I think. But it got to the point, because of the controversial things I was getting involved with and going up against, that my workplace found my channel and told me I have to stop making videos and stop YouTube if I want to maintain my position as a manager. And I had just got this manager's position not that long prior, and it's not a proud moment, it really isn't, but I capitulated and I took the channel down. And it was sad. It was a sad day, and I didn't enjoy it, but I realized in hindsight maybe it was what was best for me mentally. And I think God used that opportunity to teach me things, because I was a manager. I learned how to be a leader of men, in a sense, how to lead teams, what it meant to be a leader. I learned a lot in those 5 years as a manager of a team of people at a supermarket. I know it seems trivial, but it's wisdom and knowledge I wouldn't have otherwise have experienced if I hadn't fully committed to that role, But it got to the point after the end of the 5 years where I was exacerbated with the company. I had this nagging feeling that I'm not a supermarket manager. I'm a conspiracy theorist. I shouldn't be doing this. It's not what I was called to do. It's not who I was. It's just what I happened to be doing during that time. So after I got attacked by a member of the public, and after many horrible events going all the way through the pandemic, working in retail, I saw the mad people with toilet roll and everything going down, and all the pasta coming off the shelves, and the abuse hurled at me, and I was obviously rejecting a lot of the mandates, which obviously caused a lot of pressure as well in working with the public and other things. And it was one beatdown after another working for that company, one abuse after another working for that company, accusations thrown against me of theft, which were false, which I proved as unequivocally false, but the people who made the accusations had no reprimand. It was just their attempt to get rid of me because they wanted to promote somebody else ahead of me. It was just internal nagging politics. But again, I learned a lot about how people work doing. So in a way, that 5 years was me learning to grow up, basically, and gain some life skills, which I wouldn't have otherwise have had. And I felt it's time to leave that. And I gave it all to God, basically, and said, okay, I'm put it in your hands. I'm going to start my own company. I'm going self-employed, and I'm going back to YouTube. So I now run a wedding photography company with my wife. We had a good first year, and here's to a stronger second year, but I also started the channel up again, and it just went crazy. It's grown exponentially, and I've added 30 new episodes to the clown series, and I've polished up my work. I think I'm a lot calmer now, and I've come at it from a whole new kind of angle. But yeah, that's basically where I've been. Yeah.
You've been a busy boy, and I didn't realize you. I remember you from I guess it would have been 2018. I remember people talking about, oh, you got to check out this Nephilim clown thing, and then I realized, yeah, you came back on a year ago or something like that. But I also did not know that you were. I just found out now that you're a wedding photographer. So is that accurate? So you're a wedding photographer. So I know. Did you happen to know I used to be a wedding photographer 20 years ago?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's so. Yeah, God bless you. I mean, it really hit me how now with an art background, I totally get why you're in that, and I won't go off the rails on this, but I went into wedding photography back with the switch from film to digital, and there was a huge hole, a vacuum, where you had an entire generation of professional photographers who were filmed. They're like, I'm not doing this. I'm not I've been doing this 30 years. I'm walking away from this right now. Right. They started out in the 70s or the 80s or whatever. And so I came in and I started doing it. And that's how I got my start. Yeah. And I remember every weekend I was flying back to, I was based out of California. I'm flying to Boston, New York, Chicago, DC, Puerto Rico, Alaska, everywhere, Colorado, Washington, wherever. And anyways, I remember the day I looked in this survey, the study came out on the most difficult jobs you could work. And I saw photographer right in there, wedged between steel worker and coal miner. And I'm like, oh, it's a tough job. So I hats off to you, Paul, for doing that. It's really awesome though that you're in that with your wife as well. So that's some good support in the wedding industry. So
it's interesting. It's interesting, but I'll admit it's hard to corral masses of people on someone's special day, and in a way, it's odd. You kind of become the coordinator of the entire day. You become the wedding coordinator when you're the photographer. It's very odd, and but I'm a personable person. I'm good with people. I kind of always have been. I'm just one of those guys, you know, and I don't really get stage fright very easily, so it's easy for me to do that type of thing. So it naturally just kind of fit into place quite well. And it's a very saturated industry though. So I'm lucky. I'm actually also blessed that even though that is an income for my family, it's not my sole income. I also make a living doing what I do online as well. And again, that's a blessing. I get to do what I love now, and it's like I said, I took a leap of faith, quit a very well-paying managerial job to have a go on my own, and I've landed on my feet by just talking. It's literally what it came down to, you know. And I was obviously utilizing my knowledge and skills in photography has helped as well. So it's just one of those.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing about, I'm sorry, you got me off on this now. I wasn't expecting to. I think the hardest thing about wedding photography is that you're selling people on a product that doesn't exist yet.
Mhm.
Like they're going to go, I want to hire you because you did this and this and this and this work. But the product doesn't exist yet. You have no control over the weather, you know, everything that's going to happen. You can't do reshoots, right? I mean, they're probably, I don't even know what weddings cost now. I remember the average American wedding back 20 years ago was $50,000 for one day. So I have no clue what I'm totally out of it. But you know, you can't just go, can you drop another $50,000? Let's go back in and do some reshoots. You can't do that, right? And also, people love other people in your work, but they're going to judge themselves in your work very differently. So when they see the photos, they're like, yeah, you know, it's a tough field. It's a tough field. Okay, so yeah, let's get back into the after that fun little commercial break right there. So anyone out there in the UK region, we gotta, you know, I mean, come on, guys, you guys totally want this guy to come photograph your wedding if you're going to get married. So if I ever I mean, my wife is a one-stop shop, so I guess I'll never get married again, so I can't hire you. Sorry, but all right. All right. So Nephilim, clowns. A lot of people are out there familiar. What I'm really interested in is your take on what's going on with the Millennial Kingdom short season, because I see you pumping out a lot of videos and you're interviewing a lot of people. You know, you brought on several different people. They all have their takes. And that was one of the things that came up earlier today when I said, you know, how do you determine truth? And here you're watching a lot of different people come in with it. It's almost like in the early years of the flat earth, where you had all these people going, I know we don't live on a globe. I know it's not a spinning, wobbling globe hurtling through space, but what do we actually live on, right? And a lot of the flat earthists, there were all these different like wars for like, you know, what map was going to monopolize everything. You know, there were the Pac-Man people and the pyramid, multi-dimensional people and the, you know, all the different stuff like that. There were even some like eyeball Earth people. They didn't call themselves. It was like this oval, like, but it kind of like whatever.
I remember that. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're. It's interesting because you're getting a different perspective out there. I just, you know, keep to my own lane. I do my own research, just put out my own stuff. I don't follow a lot of what other people are saying, but you've been getting a lot of that recently. So I'd be interested to hear your take on some of that, the different ideas that are coming out and what your ideas are. That's, you know, whatever's going on.
I mean, it's a very broad subject. This is the thing. It depends on what facet you want my opinion on, to be honest. And you want my opinion on who are we after the resurrection, or after the millennial reign ends and the little season starts. So, when does the resurrection happen? I mean, there's all sorts. I think the problem is, no, if you let me go, I will go on for like 3 hours. So you're gonna, if you want like a specific view on it, that maybe narrow it down a little a little bit. But yeah, I've been pumping out a lot of content about it. You're right. Yeah.
So I'll let you pick. I mean, okay. So we're looking at the investigation is, are we living in Revelation 20? All right. So there's a lot of things you could work with. Has New Jerusalem come down yet or not? That's the big question that everybody has. How did the Millennial Kingdom start? When did it start? Are we looking at missing time? Is the timeline pretty consistent? How long is the short season? When did the short season start? You know, there's the resurrection thing, as you brought up. You have Greater Tartaria, you know, and the architecture and all that stuff. So I mean, you could pick any of it and just, you know, what does like the package deal look like for you? What are your conclusions? What are the things you've not concluded, you're unsure on. It could be anything.
Maybe it might be good just to explain why I'm even talking about it and what got me here, because like I said, I explained at the beginning, my channel is, I'm one of those guys, I will look at every single theory. My channel's called Understanding Conspiracy for a reason. I want to know it all, because I'm not just interested in just one theory to answer everything. I want to know every single idea out there surrounding every single conspiracy to create a holistic image. Where does each conspiracy fit into the wider puzzle, So far, like I said, the biblical narrative fits it all nicely as one complete picture. Once you stop, every conspiracy is a piece towards these agendas at play. And I was there initially when I first obviously came to wake up and I became a Christian. I was with a lot of Christians. It's all about end times, Jesus is about to return, tribulation is about to begin type of theology, And I was there looking for the signs of the times, trying to determine who was the next Antichrist, what was the mark of the beast going to be, following transhumanism and all these type of things, trying to figure out, is that the mark of the beast, or what's the black goose stuff all about over here as well? Oh, AI is on the rise as well. Is that going to be the thing that gives life to the beast? And I was there with a lot of people, seeing the signs in the heavens, the earthquakes everywhere, the wars and rumors of wars, and it's been perpetually for a decade one scare event after another saying Jesus is about to return, these are the signs, and we're going through tribulation, But I've always felt at the back of my mind there's something off about all of this. It all seems very contrived. It feels like a script is being played out in front of my eyes by the people who want me to believe Jesus is about to return. And this is a huge issue of faith as well, because people have been waiting 2,000 years for Jesus to turn up, and it's kind of how much longer are we supposed to wait? There's always a new mark of the beast. There's always a new thing it could be. There's always actors on the world stage messing with us, like Obama changing his license plate on the limo to be the beast, and these type of things. Always doing little things like that all the time. And then I looked and I noticed that, this type of theology, this dispensationalist, perhaps Zionist theology as well, and also just this theology that is premillennialism, is allowed to be talked about quite heavily. It's on the TV as well. It's what the megachurches basically go along with. It seems to be the normal theology, and the sanctioned theology for Christianity today. And I watched conspiracy go throughout the years, and these topics appear as well, So let's say the flat Earth was perhaps the first major turning point around the 2013-14 period. And like you said, there's this explosion, wasn't there, coming out of this, of models, numerous models of what the Earth could be, eyeball Earth being one of them. I think Casey from Enter the Stars is the guy who came up with that concept. But then you have obviously numerous flat map models, the circular disc model, the square Pac-Man model, as you described, it got to the point, there's even concave, or it's still a sphere, but we're living on the inside of the ball, looking in the center, I did them all, like I'm doing it right now with the Millennial Reign topic. I did the same thing with Flat Earth. I want to hear them all. Give me all your models. I want to hear every single one and your justification for why that is the truth. Because I found this happens a lot, but most of these channels who have their model are dogmatic about it. I have the truth and you need to listen to me. That's really follows a lot of these type of channels. My way is the only way, and anybody else is an idiot if they don't see it my way. I've never been like that, but I'm willing to listen to their idea anyway. And so my conclusion came at the end of the Flat Earth season of conspiracy is, okay, well, it's definitely not what they've told us. That's all I can really take from it. I wasn't there when God laid the foundations of the earth. I didn't see it from his perspective, and I can't see it from his perspective. So I'm not going to settle on I know the shape or model precisely, but all I can know is what I don't know. And by that I mean I know it's not what they've told us. It's not what NASA's purporting. So I call it's an enclosed system. That's as much as I can know. It's not infinite space. It's an enclosed system. And that's where I settled on that. And I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that answer. But I'm aware of all the possibilities thoroughly. So I tackled Flat Earth with that aspect. And then Mandela effect turned up. That was the next wave. And that was a huge contentious topic for a good couple of years, 2014 to 2016 period roughly, and I did the same thing again. I got New Age perspectives on my channel, I got Christian angles and explanations, and I interviewed a lot of people. Sadly, a lot of those videos are gone now because YouTube has just taken them away, outright removed them. It's very odd. But I was in the game of hashing the idea out with everybody, and I still don't know what to make of the Mandela effect. I'm still not 100%, you know.
The Mandela effect was so contentious when it first came out.
Oh yeah.
And for back in 2016, I was flat Earth Mandela effect, and the flat Earthers hated the Mandela effect. They're like, this is all controlled. This is all fake. You're making us look bad. It's highly, but now it's not even a taboo subject anymore. Now it's just like, you go talk about it with the normies and they're like, okay, so.
Yeah. And primarily then it was always there's always been this dichotomy in conspiracy. It's the Christians versus the New Agers. That's at least what it was in the old school Christianity years ago, the 2012 period coming up to the spirit science types, who were always, the Anunnaki types, the David Icke type truthers. And then you had the Christian truthers, and they were really the only two factions. But then you also had that other contingent, which I wouldn't call real truthers, it's more conspiratainment, the left-right paradigm, the political factions, the alt-right versus the far-left type of truthers, the 99%ers or the 1%ers, the anonymous groups versus the Steven Crowder types. There's always been that battle. But I think they're just in a completely lost, pointless battle. They're not really getting anywhere. But then in the real conspiracy arena, it was always the New Agers versus the Christians in the middle. And I was always trying to be a voice of like, okay, well, we're all trying to get to the truth here. Chill out. Let's see what we can all offer. But that was a long time ago. That was 2018. That's the state it was left in. But when I came back. It's weird now. I think all these early New Age chakra alignment spiritual types have now graduated into just outright learned occult Gnosticism. They're all in that camp now, and they're all swimming in extreme hyper Gnostic thinking, alchemical thinking, all that type of stuff, thinking they're really, really deep and wise and have all this deep esoteric knowledge. And then the Christians are still there, but they're weaker than they used to be. When I came back at the start of 2023, it's just a lot of them are gone. A lot of them are even dead, to be honest. And it's kind of the channels have disappeared. But there's this really loud, strong, growing contingent of Gnostic truthers now, which kind of dominate the arena. And they've co-opted all the topics: Mandela effect, flat Earth, everything. And then Tartaria was this big thing when I came back, which I had been listening to for a long time before I came back on my channel. I was always aware of it, this hidden history stuff. And I think was it Max Egan, is that his name? He's an Australian who was always on his own radio show talking about this years ago, about how history's all a lie, but he always had his soul's Christianity and all of that's a lie too angle thrown in there, and it's all done by the evil controllers, to keep us suppressed and weak or something. Very prison planet type stuff. But I remember listening to him talking about history is just a mess. It's an absolute mess. And he had a lot of valid points to make. And then Tartarian stuff came out. The Anatoly Fomenko information started coming out to the forefront. And then the Tartarians were really rolling with that. And new chronologists were turning up. But they all had a very strong anti-Christian undertone to everything they were saying all the time. And I wasn't cool with that. Naturally, I'm like, okay, it's one thing to say history is a lie, but why you have to consistently try and then rope in Christianity with that and say that's all just absolute nonsense as well along with it, and then push the same lie I was hearing on the DMT trips back in the day. You're a god. We're all god collectively. We just need to unlock our collective power or something. I don't know. All energy and frequency. And I was shocked, So go ahead. Sorry.
We were talking about this, you and I, privately after the last interview, and we were talking like almost an hour about this and the change that you saw happen. And of course, I mean, I came out with a video about 4 months ago where I talked about how the community is fractured, and I got a lot of criticism for that. They're like, "No, you're not supposed to say that. That's not true." And but from behind the scenes, I actually watched it happen. And the observations you had about, the flat Earth movement, for example, started out as a good old boy, a Baptist boys, club type of thing. It was a bunch of these, KJV guys and, just Bible readers going, yeah, the Earth is flat. And it was very exoteric. It's just very straightforward. And then I remember when the split happened, without going into too much inside detail, but that was back when I was writing my book, The Unexpected Cosmology, which then became the website. But I was interviewing, dozens of different people in the flat earth movement all across the board. And it started really well. And then by the end of the project, it never finished, because there was this huge just split. And people are like, well, if he's in the book, I don't want to be in it. If he's in the book, and that guy's a shell and that guy's a shell, and I'm not going to be a part of this. And I couldn't even finish it at that point. But there went an all-out war in early 2020, late 2019 on Christianity, where you had a lot of these truthers going, we're sick and tired of the Bible and Christianity being the spokesperson for this movement. And so they did a push off. And so, yeah, when you come back in, all of a sudden, it's almost like when Kent Hovind, he goes to prison. And he comes back, and all of a sudden, everyone believes in the earth is flat. It's like, what happened was in prison. And so, yeah, but it feels like that now, where there is, there's no shortage of people calling me a Gnostic, right? I mean, you've seen that. But there's a lot of name calling that way, but there's no shortage of very, YouTubers who come across like they're these gurus, like these esoteric gurus. And I almost see it like it's a mask they're wearing. I don't think it's really who they are, but they talk a certain way and they present a certain way. And anyways, I'm going to give what I'm curious about is on your journey of looking into the short seas in the Millennial Kingdom. Something else you could address too is how this has changed your outlook for the world, maybe your theology, your doctrine. I don't know what word to put in there.
Yeah, well, like I said, I'd laid the foundation there for how I got to the Millennial Kingdom. It seemed like the logical next big thing in that train of big topics that kind of took the whole conspiracy culture by storm. Now, in between those, the big three, let's say Flat Earth, Mandela, and Tartaria, there's been other things that have come along. I remember there was a huge false flag hoax contingent of truthers during that early period where everything was a hoax, everything was crisis actors, everything is fake on the media. There was a lot of that going around at the time as well. There was like a golden age of conspiracy around maybe the 2014 to 2017 period, but it started to collapse when things got hyper political during that 2016 period where Brexit was happening and the Trump elections were starting to begin, and then there was that. It started getting more focused in the SJWs versus the hyper conservatives, and then things just started to blur and get chaotic. And so, like I said, I noticed all these strange patterns, but I noticed these were the big ones. And then suddenly, while I'm taking my hiatus at the end of it, people are now talking about this Millennial Kingdom concept. And it was very underground, very low level, small channels talking about this concept. When
did you start hearing about it? When it was low level, when did you start hearing about it?
Like I said, I think it was Max Egan was mentioning kind of this idea, maybe like 2000 and it would have been maybe 18, 19 period. But then I started see channels like Exploring Tartaria, for example, was the first one that got me clued into it. I think she was 2018, maybe 19 when she made her first videos about it, and then she just fell off the earth. I don't know where she is. She's gone now. Stopped making videos. But that initial injection of her just speculating of, I think the Millennial Raid may have already happened. It's basically just that's her entire video series summed up in like 3 sentences, 3 words there. I think it's already happened. There seems to be a lot of weird stuff going on, and then from there, I saw a lot of mud flooders turn up, and people. I think there may be a channel called Mud Flooders Armageddon I remember listening to his early work as well, and he was going on about this concept that it was biblical. In concept, it was Armageddon, it was the tribulation that caused the mud flood and all these other things. And initially it was that kind of this is interesting, but I'm just going to put it to one side for now. But then I kept seeing it was growing and more, but then I started to find Shelley talking about it as well, and things did start to click in my mind. And then when I came back onto YouTube myself, but I was more swimming in Nephilology, and biblical history in that respect. And I have a book to write, which I'm still writing, So I didn't really want to tackle this subject yet, but it was always just there, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I'm not a one-trick pony. I might be the guy who talks about the clowns, but I talk about everything, and I felt like I need to discuss this topic. I need to, because everyone's Tartaria obsessed right now, but this makes more sense. This makes way more sense about what's going on here, And I just made that one video, didn't I? Maybe a few months ago, just laying it out. So this is the topic. This is the millennial reign theory. And what I did was pull from all of these channels I'd been watching over the last 3 years, and Alpha, I think Alpha Talks is one of them as well. And there's too many to count, you know, because it's just there was a lot of channels talking about it, but it was relatively unknown. Everyone was still on the Mudflood Tartaria hype, and everyone was following the John Levi types, you know, and the big ones who were always going on about this topic. But I just made this video explaining the millennial reign angle, and I never claimed to own it. I'm not an expert on it. I just echoed what people had been saying and kind of made a summary video for 20 minutes sat in my car. And it was me trying to figure out, okay, then, so how can we square this then? So what does this mean? Exactly, Revelations 20, you know, the rest of the dead are not resurrected till the 1,000 years is over. So are we those people then? Are we the resurrected dead? Is that what that means? You know, and I'm just asking these questions and with no real answers, you know, just hashing it out, and the reactions to that. It went viral. The video's on like 160,000 views now or something. And I'm getting constant visceral reactions from people. It goes one or two ways. There's no lukewarm person about this topic. When it comes to Christianity, it's either extreme, full capitals, no punctuation, you're ridiculous, I know you're wrong, I know Jesus is about to return, and this is stupid, you need to stop talking about it. And then there's the other Christians who are like, oh my God, like this makes sense, you know, and that's it. That's the only two reactions you get. There's no real, oh, well, that's interesting to think about. I'll definitely put that on the shelf of wonder in the back of my mind and get on with my life. It's one or the other, and that's what fascinated me the most about it. The knee-jerk visceral reactions this gives to a lot of Christians. Now, me, as like I said, as a Christian who wasn't raised with any particular dogma, it's easy for me to humor these ideas. You know, it was easy for me to talk about it and not let it bother me too much. I never became a Christian because I was taught that I get to avoid suffering and get raptured. I'm not a Christian based on some contractual thing that I don't get to suffer, which I think a lot of people are hoping for, you know. And
that was one of the things. That was one of the things I said earlier, when you were able to circumnavigate a lot of that, the propaganda, or whatever you want to call it. Indoctrination, maybe is a better word. Zionist indoctrination, and that was the worldview I grew up in. I mean, it was tough. It took years and years of taking the sledgehammer and breaking down that wall, because I remember sitting around the table in 1988 and believing that I was not going to live to see the year 1989, because this is what people would sit down and tell me, that, you know, they say Jesus is going to return in 1988, and then there was 88 reasons, and then the sequel was 89 reasons in 89 and 90 reasons in 1990, and it, you know, then, you know, OMG, when, you know, Bill Clinton became the president, oh, this is it, this is the Antichrist. What's funny is that you know, Jimmy Carter was the Antichrist, Ronald Reagan was the Antichrist, George H.W. Bush was never the Antichrist. I don't think there was a person in the right mind who would ever go, yeah, that guy could pull it off. But, you know, Obama, all those guys. And so what you're doing is it's like Flat Earth 2.0, right? Because people love that globe. They love to hug that globe, you know, to their bosom. And what I've said with globe Earth over and over again, it has little to nothing to do with the shape of the Earth, and it has everything to do with the shape of humanity, because they look in that globe and they see everything in that globe and they don't want to give it up. And it's the same way with this. And people are so emotionally just fused to this, that it's almost like trying to, I don't know. I don't even know what a good comparison is, you know, but, you know, just, it's like waking up someone in their violent in their sleep or something. I don't know.
Well, but the people have identified with premillennialism. They've identified with that for so long. They've taught it for so long to all their loved ones. They have made it about their personality, that, you know, they're the ones who are preaching the word just before Jesus returns. They're going to get to reign with Christ for all their good works that they've done up into that process. You know, they're saving souls from the evil that's about to come upon the earth and the destruction and the pain, you know. And I think a lot of people maybe have wrapped themselves up with a lot of pride with premillennialism. It's an odd thing, because again, I've literally, through my whole walk with Christ, I've never really thought about the rapture. I haven't cared about that concept. It's not my priority. I love Christ because I'm thankful that he saved me from a life of depravity where I was on the brink of probably suicide, you know. And that's personal. And I'm just thankful for that, and that I get to live a life while I have it here that is better than I ever could have imagined, thanks to him. And that's it. I'm happy with that, and I'm thankful for that. And he has me because of it. I don't need anything else, and I know there's going to be more. Maybe when I die, now in Great White Throne Judgment, whatever comes next, and that's great. But there's times where I don't feel worthy still. So I'm not really I've never really banked on my righteousness and the way I've preached the gospel is going to get me anywhere. It's kind of I'm a sinner and I need a savior, and Jesus has saved me, and I'm happy. I'm happy for that, and it's worked, and it's proven to me that that's enough. But I think a lot of people they still need the signs, and they want the tribulation to be happening, so it proves to them that Jesus is real, because look at all these earthquakes everywhere. It proves Jesus is about to come back and he's real, because look at the wars that are starting in the Middle East, and the faith is hinging on tribulation. My faith doesn't hinge on that, so it was easy for me to question the timeline perspective quite easily. It wasn't an issue for me internally, but I didn't realize it would be such a big issue for everybody else until I opened my mouth.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I'm not aware of the rules of engagement for this. I don't speak Christianese, you know what I mean? And yeah, I realized I've learned what I just said. I learned from people's comments that how much they have identified solely with premillennialism, pre-trib rapture stuff, and to take that away from them, I don't think they'll know who they are anymore. It's not you're not attacking eschatology. You're attacking them personally when you say this, and that's odd to me. But that's what I've noticed.
To be honest, Paul, I say so many things that I never know what the one thing is that's going to just start the tar and feather parade. Like it's you never, like, whatever I think it's going to be, it's not that. And it's always something like, really, that was it. Like, that was the big moment but yeah. So I've learned that there's for me, there's no patterns in this. It's just, you never know what the thing is going to get people ape crazy. But the idea that what you said about your lack of worth, right? And I think that's huge in this, because, and I don't want to say that somebody who is really into rapture theory or whatever, that they also don't feel a lack of worth, or that they're not worthy, or that the Lamb alone is worthy to open the scrolls, as it says in Revelation. But the fact of the matter is that this is the most entitled generation in a long time, at least in anything on record officially. And an example of this is that the baby boomer, I think the average household, particularly in World War II, the war generation, I think the average household had 3 or 4 pictures of themselves in their house, just family photos. And then the narcissism went through the roof even 20 years ago, where they started noticing that the millennials, the Gen X and millennials, would have upwards of 200 photos of themselves in their house. So as they're going through their house, they're just seeing these pictures of themselves up on the walls, and it's just me. And then, of course, social media takes that through the roof, right? And so there's a huge entitlement of, when you're declaring that these things are past, it's like, how dare you take that away from me? Like, my whole reality was hinged on the fact, I was going to be the bride. I was going to be the 144,000. I was going to be this. I was going to be the one raptured out of here. And so you're kind of taking a lot of that, well, I'll say entitlement, but that might not be totally fair, but I'm taking a lot of that away from people. So I get the visceral reaction out of a lot of people. I can, understand it. Quick question. You mentioned the book you're working on, not to take us off topic, but this can be like a 15-second question. When do you expect to finish the book? Wait. Hold on.
There we go. Sorry, I muted my mic. Sorry, because I had some noise in the background. That's on me. Yeah, so the book is, I'm just finishing up chapter 17 of a planned 30 chapters. My target is to have the book written, first draft, and then edited, a decent manuscript finished by the end of the year. Then obviously I will go into publishing early into the next year. That's probably where I'm aiming for. I'm going to do what I can to see if any publisher wants to pick it up or help me out in any way. But maybe I might go down the self-publishing route if no one picks it up within a few months, maybe. But the support has been overwhelming. the pre-orders have come through heavily. I think I have about 63 pre-orders already.
I
And
I'm impressed that you actually know how many chapters you're going to have. That's impressive. From one writer to another, I'm impressed because I never know what I'm going to have until it's a well, to quote, sorry to quote Stephen King, everybody, but Stephen King actually had a great analogy for writing, and he said being a writer is like being an archaeologist, and you're walking through the desert and you stub your toe on something and you don't know what it is, and so you start digging, right? And it could just be a little tiny something, or you start digging and you got a whole pyramid, right?
yeah.
But anyways, that's impressive that you have it all planned out and
Well,
scheduled.
I can quickly can I present on this? Is that possible? Can I share my screen?
Please do. Oh,
Yeah.
okay, so let's see, how do I share your screen? I have to figure that out.
I think I do that by clicking present here, and I will share screen. And I will share this page so you can see it. So can you see that on the screen now?
No, right now I see just your camera right now. I can make it. I could make the whole thing your presentation, but right now I just see you.
Yeah, if you can make it what I'm showing, then see what comes up. It says I'm sharing, but I can't quite see it. Do I have to click it? Have you done that there?
Okay. Well, my apologies for that then, because I'm not that tech savvy. So I can make your camera the full screen, but I can't force your camera to go off in something else. So
right. I'm trying to present here. What do you see?
I see your face right now.
You see my face talking because I've clicked. It says I'm sharing on StreamYard. What I'm trying to show here. It's at the bottom there. Can you see it at the bottom, or is that just me? Am I the only one?
Oh yeah. Hold on.
There
okay,
we go.
Boom.
Okay.
All right.
So this is my book. This is what I'm working on. So if you look at the left side here, these are the So section 1 is 10 chapters. Which is basic biblical history. It's a summary of basically the Genesis 6 conspiracy more than anything, with my own thoughts thrown in there, just to lay the foundation for why we even have Nephilim to begin with, and why there may possibly it's kind of an introduction Christianity for the conspiracy theorists out there, And so once that foundation is laid, that's written. So section 2 is all about the clown, which I'm currently writing. And like you said, I have chapter 11, biblical descriptions of angels. Chapter 12, biblical descriptions of Nephilim, and then chapter 13, modern encounters, more into the today's age outside of the Bible, North American skeletons and the Bigfoot and wild men phenomena found all over the earth, And then chapter 14 is the origin of the clown, and it's like you were saying there, once you can have this simple enough chapter, but once you actually start writing it, it turns into a book of all of its own. So I mean, has taken me a long time to write. Just the history of the clown, going into Harlequin's demonic roots, then the clown takeover as the main character within the Harlequinades, then Joseph Grimaldi, the father of modern clowns, explaining all the influences around his life, including the secret societies. And then chapter 15 is onto secret societies. So I've just been writing this for the past month. And this again has turned into a huge long tome, just maybe like 16 to 25 pages alone, just explaining the secret society's influence throughout early theatre and how we got the costume of a clown directly from the Rakshasa demons of India, brought over by Charles Dibdin, a famous playwright. And member of the fraternity of the Leicester Lodge. And I brought the receipts to explain it all and where he got his inspiration from, how he used to run a newspaper called The Devil, where he claims he made a deal with the devil for his fame. Honestly, really dodgy stuff, And then the circuses, the Freemason rituals, how that's incorporated, then the Shriners and their involvement with modern circuses and what they believe, and then the Royal Order of the Jesters and the dodgy things they're involved with as well, and just how the clown is synonymous with secret societies. They venerate the clown. In fact, to be a jester, which is one of the highest honors within the whole fraternity, they call themselves jesters, to be of the highest of the societies, and there's a reason for that, because they're talking about their gods, And I've just been writing chapter 16 now, the caricature, And this is going into each section of the clown and why it represents the Nephilim specifically. And this is obviously callbacks constantly to chapter 12, where there's biblical descriptions of the Nephilim and of the angels themselves, and also modern descriptions of Nephilim, which justify why they look like this. And again, this is just section 2, and I've still got to write about the Hat Man, sacred clowning, and then DMT jesters, and then that'll be section 2 done. On to section 3, which will, again, I've planned it out because I already know all this stuff. It's all in my head. But then to go out there and get the necessary references, you know, and you end up finding more information the more you do research for each topic. So I have a rough outline here, and I have a remaining. Each chapter in this section 3 is about each continent and their own versions of Nephilim representations and different folk traditions. South America, North America, Europe, Africa, the Indic regions, Asia, Australasia, and the Oceanic regions as well. So I've already got some bullet point notes of cultures I'm going to go to. I've already made many videos, in fact, on my channel discussing all of these things in depth. There's some extra ones on there which will need fleshing out as well, which I've not discussed yet. So once that chapter's done, then it's on to all the fun stuff, modern day manifestations in media, clown murderers. I'm currently writing this whole chapter 27 on clown murderers. I've just done an expose on John Wayne Gacy there, and I've just also done one about a Florida doorstep murderer from the 90s who was dressed as a clown, and there's many, many, many more to write about. And I think that I'm looking at this whole section 4, and I'm thinking this might be a whole different book, to be honest. I'm starting to think, because it's all the pop culture stuff, the 2016 clown sightings, chorophobia, the fear of clowns. We're talking about the multicolored collective, which is my code word for the extreme liberal socialist types, you know, who like to dye their hair multicolors and mutilate their bodies. Then you got film and TV references to the clowns, the music industry's use of the clown costume to channel demons still today. And then section 5 is basic conclusions. But I have mapped it out, but you know, what seemed like a simple thing, for example, like let's say chapter 15, Secret Societies and Clowns, has turned into a huge job with many subheadings, and I imagine many of these chapters will too. But I'm trucking along, you know, and I want this to be a well-researched, thorough, scholarly work. I'm not just slapping this together, you know, because I'm talking about something that needs proof. I'm bringing the evidence. It's referenced to the nines, you know. I'm already on like 313 references and then some, you know what I mean? This is a well-documented tome of secret societies, ancient history, and folk. It's the middle section is an anthropological study on folk traditions as well, which venerate the Nephilim and why they use the clown costume to specifically channel their ancestor spirits. And to summarize my entire theory, what all these folk traditional cultures do, which I'm going to talk about, is what the Freemasons have done. But they've created their costume and called it a clown. And they've introduced it into our society as a hidden symbol. But they've just copied straight from India, mainly, in its main creation. But it's evolved since then into what we call a clown today. But it's still the same. The costume clowns wear. Sorry, go ahead.
When did they introduce it?
It was in 1799, and then the turn of the century, 1800, is when it was popularized by the Patsy, which was Joseph Grimaldi, just the famous actor at the time who wore the costume. But the costume was designed by the son of a Freemason called Charles Dibdin, who was heavily involved with India. Charles Dibdin's brother, Thomas Dibdin, was a soldier in the British Army who was colonizing India at the same time, the East India Company. He actually died in India, and Charles Dibdin made a song dedicated to his brother. And that song became incredibly famous during the time for sailors to sing. And Charles Dibdin was a prolific, very, very, very famous Freemason of the day in the entertainment industry. Anyway, in true nepotistic form, his son, who was also called Charles Dibdin, just to complicate matters, he took over the theatre of the day where this famous actor was, Joseph Grimaldi, and he changed the costume of a clown, which was just a boring plain white servant's rag. He decided, for no explanation given in history, by the way, but he just decided to change the costume into a psychedelic polka dot fractal demon monster. Completely not what the clown was known for prior to that. Prior to that, the clown dressed something like the French clown, Poirot, which was just all in white, with white makeup, and that was it really. But Joseph Grimaldi was dressed by this son of a Freemason in basically the same costume worn by the Rakshasa demons of India. The very same costumes, in fact, worn on the specific temples in Thailand, funnily enough. And you can see through the early artworks of that time period. So maybe if I just find it quickly, Joseph Grimaldi. So this is the actor who was dressed in the costume designed by the Freemasons. He's here wearing this particular early proto costume, for example. Prior to that, Pedrolino. This is what clown used to dress like an Elizabethan dog's body, like an Elizabethan servant's class. But then suddenly he was changed to dress like you just saw there, Joseph Grimaldi. Why the sudden drastic change after 300 years of the same relative costume? It's never explained, just that it happened, But when you actually look into, like I said, the history, Charles Dibdin. So this is Charles Dibdin Senior here. He had his son right next to him here. Charles Dibdin the Younger. So Charles Dibdin, again, high-level famous Freemason with ties to India. His son, of the same name, in the same industry, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, took over the theatre and introduced Indian demonic iconography into the theatre. So we have the Rakshasa Thailand temple, let's say. He basically took this costume and dressed Joseph Grimaldi in the exact same thing. So there's a specific one called the Kala Sungsang remnant of this. So Kala Sungsang demon. It translates to upside down demon. So this is quite a famous rendition. The upside down demon here. This is the exact same costume you just saw Joseph Grimaldi wearing. Here, upside down. Can you see? So they literally modeled it after the Indians' representations of the demonic. So there you go. That's where you get the clown from through and through. It is a representation of demons, specifically the Rakshasa of India. But since then, that became the industry standard, and it got adopted into American circuses, and it became basically the demonic representation for the Freemasonic rituals done on a grand scale through a circus. So you have the ringleader, for example, of any circus. This is actually the worshipful Grand Master of any lodge. There it was, the most worshipful Grand Master. It's the same thing. Most people don't know this, but it's only the most worshipful Grand Master who's allowed to wear a top hat in the lodge. And basically what circuses were a proto mimic of lodge rituals done on a grand scale in the public eye without the public realizing it. So the ringleader is the worshipful Grand Master orchestrating the ritual, and the clowns represent the Nephilim, which are venerated by these ancient mystery school wisdoms which date back to the antediluvian age, So that's basically where you get clowns from. It's just this particular sect's version of ancestor spirit worship culture. So you find that going on quite a lot in Africa, India, the oceanic regions more so, and some pockets of South America and North America specifically. You even find it going on in Australia. So you have the Wandjina, for example, in Australia. So this is their version of the Nephilim. This is what they depicted them as, and they quite literally look like clowns in a very literal sense. And this is because the Freemasons are traveling men, What they did was see these versions of their gods represented in different cultures and then incorporate it into their design, which is the clown. So you'll find that here, for example, the Wandjina are always depicted with polka dots all over the skin and this white ruff around the neck, which is common for clowns today, and with this big red afro. Well, they've likely seen these rock art depictions, which are ancient, and copied it and added it to their symbol, which was what we call a clown today. They took inspiration from many cultures and made this amalgam image we call a clown. But what it really is a representation of the Wandjina. The Wandjina are the offspring of the rainbow serpent of Australian Dreamtime mythology, which is the grand serpents that came and basically created civilization. You know, these are the seraphim angels. These are the fathers
Yeah.
of the Nephilim. You know, and their offspring, which were the human hybrid offspring with a Wangina. And lo and behold, they look like clowns. You know, by today's standards. Now they wouldn't have called them clowns then. They probably didn't have a concept of a Western clown then. It didn't exist. It's just the Western clown is modeled after these depictions. So yeah, there you go. That's my work, very quickly summarized. But this is just one culture of thousands. I have hundreds of thousands of depictions of the Nephilim through many cultures. This is a very on the nose one, you know, which I like to use as a main example. There it is with the rainbow serpent, the father and son together, you know. But it's what I'm saying is it's not just a load of nonsense. You know, this is grounded in reality, and it's wild. It's wild. It truly is.
I think it's the whole thing is brilliant. Yeah, really good. So take me then to how. So you came up with this whole idea of you started making the connections between Nephilims and clown. All right. Then we get into fast forward. You're off the air. 5 years go by. You start looking into Millennial Kingdom, short season theory, and now you've got this whole clown thing. How are you tying this up into? So, what does this look like to you with the short season, Millennial Kingdom, all that kind of stuff? How do you?
It can stand alone, separate from it, really. Because the thing is, these beings are now disembodied spirits we call demons today. But when they were physical, they looked something like this, you know. So really, this Nephilim clown thing is more of a know your enemy subgenre topic. I think can stand alone without having to intermingle with the Millennial Kingdom stuff. As far as I'm concerned, they're still here, and we still have to deal with them until the Lake of Fire, until they're fully destroyed at the end of time, you know. So we still have to deal with demons today. And people still trip on DMT and interact with jesters, as they call them, you know, DMT jesters, which are just the disembodied spirits of these creatures, you know, who still have the wide-grinned serpentine features going on with the psychedelic patterns. And my work on the clowns is mainly there so people stop being deceived by when they interact with them in the spirit realm, the astral realm, where they're currently trapped as disembodied spirits, you know, demons. A lot of people think they're enlightened beings or gods that have something special to offer them, when really all they are pathetic losers who don't even have a body, who are stuck in the plumbing of reality right now, looking to cause offenses and mess with anybody who's willing to humor them, you know. But what these creatures really are just the disembodied spirits of, let's say, the Wangina. That's one example, you know. But there's thousands of depictions. You know, they're the only demons of Japan as well. They're the Rakshasa demons of India. So I don't think this has to necessarily be linked at all in any way to the Millennial Kingdom. And it may be best to keep it separate in terms of my writings as well, because the book's getting complicated enough and big enough. You know?
I understand.
Yeah.
If you in your research you don't want to make that connection. The way I function, the way I think is that, you know, when I was on your show, I started seeing my research as what I call the kingdom verse now, right? It's this idea that the kingdom of heaven, there are the mysteries of heaven. These would, of course, tie in with the mysteries of heaven, because they are the mysteries that the watchers initiated through their children, of course, the Nephilim. And of course, you know, then the Book of Jubilees, how many, it was it 90% of them, or it was, I think only 10% of them remained, if I'm not mistaken, after the flood. They were, you know, Noah gets off the ark, and these demons are just, you know, they never share this in Sunday school stories. So now with my children, my little girl, she has a Noah's Ark, and it has all the animals on and stuff, but it's Playmobil. You're from the UK, you know what Playmobil is, right?
Yeah. I do.
Yeah,
I remember.
it's huge. Playmobil is huge there. I mean, it's like you go to the gas station, they sell Playmobil there to children. Here in America, like, nobody knows what Playmobil is. But we have the Playmobil Noah's Ark, and we have a Playmobil ghost that I make sure is always with the Ark set. And people come over there, they goes, that doesn't go in the Ark. I'm like, yeah, it does. And because they come off the Ark, and the ghost comes and attacks them, which is a scene from Jubilees. But anyways, the reason I had said that was, you know, looking at, I asked you the question, like, when did the clowns start developing? Because that's, you know, in the back of my mind, that's what I'm thinking about. You know, I'm looking at dates, you know, according to official history. And here, let me pop this back on.
Yeah,
But
official history. I gave you from 1800s onwards there for the modern rendition of a clown and where we got
yeah,
that from. But there is a prehistory to that, slightly coming out of the Dark Ages. There was a movement that was coming out of it, which we're told, was a roaming gang throughout the Middle Ages for the 1,000 years since the collapse of Rome, of out of work actors who banded together and created something called the commedia dell'arte movement out of Italy. And they were basically actors who would go from city to city, set up a quick tent, a quick stage, put on an improv show wearing masks with basic stock characters involved with the show, and then take any money from the audience that was offered to them and move on to the next city, because they were told, due to the excesses of Rome and the rise of Christendom throughout Europe, actors were seen as filthy prostitutes. They were taboo in a way, and they kind of were out of work. You find actually, funnily enough, we're told, most people who had jesters and actors were the rich and influential who could afford it and were above the law in a way. And that's kind of where we get the jester mythos from, who the king or the king's personal jokester type of thing. But really, the first clowns were introduced through that improv troupe, we're told, coming out into the 1600s, and then from like the 1500s to the 1600s is where we're told Harlequin was introduced into the cast of this now well-established traveling troupe of actors. Now, Harlequin is literally modeled after the Europeans' version of the Nephilim, called the Wild Man. And now the Wild Man tradition spread all throughout Europe. I should have kept my screen up so I could show you images. Is very, very, very clownish. And basically, Harlequins is the French version of the same myth that every single country in Europe has, of the giant club-wielding hairy beast man, okay, which is a Nephilim by any standards. But their representations are always very colourful, and the first Harlequin, which is modelled after Harlequins, the French version, was basically like a multicoloured patched wearing, dark beast hairy mask wearing, club wielding monster demon who was a stock character for the commedia dell'arte, modelled after a character these travelling actors kept seeing in every single place they went all throughout Europe. Everywhere in Europe, they all had a wild man myth. So let's introduce that into our show as a stock character, because no matter where we go, people will recognise it and understand who that is. And it was the demon. He was supposed to represent the demonic influence in the show. He had magical powers. He could change the scene with his slapstick. He was almost like Hermes-like, and which, because coming out of the Mediterranean tradition, Hermes was an influence and Dionysus was an influence. Hermes has his caduceus staff. Dionysus has his thyrsus with the pinecone on the end. Very fleet of foot, lightweight, fast, quick-witted character, demonic character, mashed together with this giant brute beast demon as well. So that's what Harlequin is. But he developed throughout the next 100 years up into the 1800s from this rude, crude beast with his stick who he would poke people's behinds with and make phallic jokes with, and into this boring, lovesick fool who was always chasing after the daughter of the rich man. And it left a void in the theatre. And obviously, by this point, Britain was doing its stage theatre shows modelled after the Commedia dell'arte. France was doing its own thing as well, which is quite big in the theatre. Everyone was doing it, and it wasn't really a travelling thing anymore. They kind of settled in the theatres, and there was kind of an evolution of the character of Harlequin. He became the lead protagonist rather than the evil background demon. And he was like a hero of sorts, trying to save the daughter of the rich man from indentured servitude for the sake of love, And then the servant of the rich man, Pedrolino, who is Clown, slowly took over as the lead character and became the demon Harlequin used to be. Because that void was there. Who's going to be the demon now? Well, Pedrolino took over, and along with that switching character from boring clown to wild demon monster, the costume change happened as well, and they dressed him like a demon too. So that's the precursor to what I've already. Then from there, I've already explained what happened from there. But
it was while now, of course, everything you're describing, it fits perfectly within my whole. Talking about short season, fits perfectly within my whole model, the whole, the frame, that the timeline I've come up with. It makes total sense to me. But it was while preparing for you to come on, and I'm kind of going through some of your older videos. I went back to the beginning of YouTube, and I was kind of just picking out random videos and looking at stuff. And it occurred to me for the first time, because I've done work on the fool or the trickster before. And of course, the idea of the idea of the trickster is that he's at the crossroads and he's actually expanding boundaries, right, through his foolery. And I've done articles on like Lucille Ball, how she was the perfect trickster, embodying this Mercury like trickster god, and through comedy and changing the family dynamic in America, and changing the role of women, and pulling them out into the workforce and that kind of stuff. And I never made that connection before, that, oh my goodness, like this idea of the it comes straight from the Nephilim, right? It's that same kind of that spiritual embodiment. Never made that connection before. But
Yeah, it's quite literally the first proto jester, Harlequin, modeled after the wild man of Europe, a demon. The later iteration of the clown, his costume and character modeled after Harlequin's original character, which was demonic and witty and foolish and funny and jester-like. The clown became like that, and also his costume then also became demonic, but rather than Western influence, it was Eastern influence for the new costume change of India instead. But through and through, the first proto-jester in theatre and the first clowns modelled specifically after very specific demons. Harlequin's Wild Man of Europe, Rakshasa demons of India. So they're demonic through and through. They always have been, the very inception. So when people embody the spirit of a clown today, they don't really know what they're saying there. They're literally putting on a mask, the costume, the skin of a Nephilim entity, creating a very strong channel to the spirit world and allowing them in. That's what it is.
I try not to promote movies, out of like nostalgia or anything like that, especially since I want to, encourage people to be set apart. But I have to admit, one of my favorite movies of all time is Uncle Buck. And it reminds me of that scene when the clown comes up and he like punches the clown in the face and the clown falls over. I don't know. I've been thinking that this whole, just, what's been swimming through my head this whole time is when John Candy punches the clown as it comes up. Oh yeah. I'm out of material at this point. This has been fascinating. And have you ever looked into, well, trivia question for you. What's the oldest wild man reference you have seen in literature? Like, how far back does the wild man go for you? Because you mentioned a lot about Europe.
It's the wild man tradition is predominantly a medieval thing. But prior to that, you have Esau, the hairy beast, the huge man from the Bible. You have Enkidu, going back to the Epic of Gilgamesh, the hairy wild beast man. This is the archetypical character of the wild beast. Has been around for a long time, a very long time.
It freaked me out because it's actually written like the way it's written in the Hebrew. It comes across me like he was a wild man. I almost described him as that, as Esau. Of course, the Epic of Gilgamesh is the oldest that I can find on record. That Ikindu, who befriended Gilgamesh, he was a wild man created by the gods. Interesting enough, I just went through 3 books from the Kolbrin, and the Kolbrin is the British Bible that kind of came out of the Middle Ages, very Druidic influence. And they identify as coming out of Egypt. And the Kolbrin, by the way, has one of the most amazing, I'm going to be reading from the next month or so, the most amazing eyewitnesses to the Exodus. It's just mind-boggling how bad it was in Egypt, the way they described it. But they describe what they call the Yoselings. And the Yoselings were all through the Middle East, and they were the hairy wild men. Interesting enough, it describes that they could go invisible and then materialize, and that these Yoslings could be in the room with you, or in the whereabouts, you wouldn't even know they're there. And so
it's interesting you say that, because that's a specific, is that a Middle Eastern geographical location phenomena specifically? But what you described there is identical to the Nung-Nungs of the Great American Plains and the Duwamish tribes who had to deal with giants in America. Very oral traditions passed down, but there's this tribe, the Duwamish, who dealt with a tribe they called the Nung Nungs, otherwise known as the City Car in other iterations of the story. But they were tall, pale-skinned, red-haired giants who would have a jester-like personality, and they would come and play practical jokes on these smaller people and just do things that were cruel by our standards but funny to them, like place things on top of trees that they need, things like that, you know what I mean, and steal washing lines. But they actually said this particular group of giant cannibals with red hair who would come into their tribe and mess with them and steal their women, they had a cream they could put on that made them invisible. And you just mentioned the invisibility thing there as well. I thought that was fascinating. They had this odd technology, and they also said they could mess with people's minds. They could make them paralyzed with they had like telekinetic abilities as well. They were not human by our standards. They were possibly part divine. They had extra abilities, including knowledge, how to make invisibility cream, for example. You know what I mean? It's very odd. But when you said invisibility there and referring to this hairy troop in the Middle East, it's the same story on every continent. We've all of humanity have contended with these things all throughout history. And that's what a lot of my book is about as well, to be honest. There's shared narratives across all cultures, just with their own different stylistic aesthetic to describe them, but they're talking about the same things.
Yeah, I mean, that all boils down to the worship of the serpent.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's exactly what it comes down to. I mean, you got the feathered serpent in America, Quetzalcoatl. That's the exact same thing as the rainbow serpent that I just showed you in Australia. The same beings, you know.
You can't go to. I think you pronounce it. I don't want to assume because did you ever go down to France? Living in the UK. Have you ever been to, was it called Lisieux or Lisieux, the cave there? Actually, you can't go. It's so lame. You can't go in the cave anymore. But they've created a fake cave that you can go. So you go visit there and you go to the fake cave because they say they don't want you to go in the real cave. But they have there so I saw the fake version. I can't get nerded out over that. But it was the feathered plumed. Well, it was like a serpentine plumed dude in there. I thought that was kind of cool.
I've not heard of that. No, I've been to France. I've been to Paris, but I've not been. It's quite touristy, really. It was for my honeymoon, so I can't really say I've. Quite stereotypical now. I think about it, but I can't say I've actually explored much of it. I was blown away by the architecture. I can tell you that much. While I was there,
that's what got me off in this whole thing. And when we went to Europe, and we were there for 6 months. And I was targeting buildings specifically. I had no knowledge of the whole Tartarian thing yet. But I was targeting because I was, really into the mystery religions, and I was studying them, and I wanted to look at the architectural change from the Dark Ages to the Enlightenment and see how they changed. I went and studied the doors, the windows. I had no knowledge of any of this research yet. And so I'm telling people that we're going to France for 3 months, and they're going like, "You're going to be in Paris the whole time, right? You're going to Paris." I'm like, "No, I'm not going to Paris." And they're like, why do you want to go to France? I'm like, because I don't want to go to Paris. I want to go see France. Right. Mm-hmm. But we did end up going to Paris like a couple days or something like that. And I have to admit, I was blown away. I was not prepared for what I saw there. And it really, truly is the most romantic city on earth. Now I'm there with they were 4-year-olds at the time, right? I mean, they're almost still pooping their pants at this time, right? I'm with my children. Don't touch the Mona Lisa. Don't go over there and touch that priceless artwork. But I could do a 360 and just a 360, and it's just all these couples like kissing and holding hands. And I'm like, I'm like the only person in Paris with like these 2 toddlers trying to hold on to them. So,
well, no, it's funny you say that because, I say I went on my honeymoon, but it was actually our after honeymoon. So me and my wife had a honeymoon at home in the UK, just me and her. And then we went on a family holiday for 7 days to Paris with my toddler. So I know exactly what you're talking about. That place is not designed to have children, okay? There is no lifts anywhere. Prams are out of the question, which is all we could use. And the people hate kids. They're very rude to you with children. And don't get me wrong, Paris is a beautiful city if you can get past all the homeless people and the graffiti and the trash everywhere. But the architecture is impeccable, that's for sure. But the people and the city they are not accommodating to families, young families, not at all. I'll say that much.
I don't want to be like, I'm trashing on the French, but it's the only place in the entire world I've been where they are literally embody the polite police. And some of the I was speaking to a British woman there who has lived in France for 30 years, and she's like, yeah, like here, she loves France. Like, don't get me wrong, she loves it, but she's like, these are the only people where they don't feel obliged to be polite themselves. They want to make sure you're polite, and they will come and let you know that you are breaking these polite rules. They're like, the hall monitor, whatever. Anyways, yeah, we got a few more. We got like 10 more minutes, and
I think it might be interesting just to come back to the wild man concept. So there is a particular wild man tradition which is still going today, actually, in Bulgaria, called the cookery. And they claim it's been the same for thousands of years. So this might be a good example of a very old example. They claim it goes all the way back to Thracian culture. That's where they claim this comes from. It's going quite far back in time here. So maybe it might be worth me just sharing with you some examples of the wild man tradition in Europe, so you can also see where they get the jester and clown from. Because the same tradition is used today for things like Lent or Mardi Gras in America, or Carnival. Through more Portuguese or Spanish traditions as well. And this is where you get it from. This is where you get the Venetian masks from, essentially, which are prototypical jester clowns.
Did you want to share a screen?
Yeah. I'm just going to bring up some images first, so I've got something to share with you. But I'm just getting it now. So it might be fun for 10 minutes to give you a bit of a display of these things. And who knows, maybe you might find some use in it for your own research with making your kingdom verse, as you call it, this idea. Because again, these are histories and cultures traditions that we need to square with the theory as well at the end of the day, so it might be worth just sharing them with you. For some reason Discord just opened, so sorry about that. Let me just quickly get that back. Right, so I will share screen, and Wildman of Europe, share, and I don't know if you can see that yet. Do you have to click on that at the bottom?
Yeah.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay, so again, just cursory searches through Google, type in Wildman of Europe, and you'll see a lot of stuff like this. So these are the medieval representations, which you get Harlequin based off of. And here's more modern renditions where people still dress like him. It's a hairy beast, man. But then you start to get these weird versions like this, where they're quite out there with the descriptions, with a wide, toothy grin and like a faceless facade. And then you get these amalgamed, hairy, strange-looking things as well appearing all the time. And these are basically, when they move and dance, the hairs wave around to make them look like ethereal, bizarre-looking entities made of sound and frequency and vibration. You know what I mean? Here's actually a tapestry of from Moorish culture showing a bunch of hairy, pale-skinned giants raiding a castle of Moorish culture. You have a little king and queen here, ordering their subjects to come and save them, basically. But you got these pale-skinned, hairy wild beast men on these old tapestries, which I thought were quite interesting. But you should see some of the renditions these people dress as. The hairy demonic beasts with big red noses, big red tongues, multicolored ribbons are often involved as well, and it can get quite psychedelic the further they go. Bells, heavily related to sound and frequency. And you got these wide mouth dragon-looking monsters as well. Very odd, but this is nothing compared to when you actually start to get into it. So let's look at the Wild Men of Europe. Let's look at cookery, and the cooker. So this is where it starts to get really trippy. They start getting more colourful when you get to more of the Romanian, Bulgarian sections as well. You start getting things like this starting to appear, and the clownish motifs really start to come through heavily, thick and heavy. The more you get into it, and they start wearing things like this on their parades and traditions, and they believe they're basically warding away evil spirits before the fast. And look at this, for example. And this is ancient. These go way back, like I said, to Thracian culture, and you find they're actually wearing these conical hats, which can have certain connotations, as you can imagine. But when you look at these, I realized, is this not the inspiration for party hats? Look at this, for example. Now they're trying to mimic something here, a ghostly, weird, psychedelic visage of something with pale skin, a red nose, rosy cheeks, and psychedelic colours and pom-poms around. And I couldn't help but imagine that these things worn in the Kukri Festival of Bulgaria are identical to a typical party hat, you know what I mean, which we put on kids with the cone and then the bobbles, for example, party hat. It's this, isn't it? This is our simplified, westernized, modern version, just a bit of fun
with
for the kids. But what's it
with a
mean to?
crown.
Yes, but what does it mean to truly wear something like that when you actually think about it? You know what I mean? When you consider that these ancient cultures have been wearing something similar to specifically mimic, and well, they claim that their version is apotropaic. Big word there, but it basically means you wear the thing to scare away the things. You wear the costume to look like enemies to scare away the enemies. Other cultures do it in the other way. You wear the costume to channel the thing. But these cultures believe they're wearing the costume to scare them away. Now, they can't both be right. I actually believe it's the channeling aspect. Now, these cultures who apotropaically wear these things, thinking they're warding away bad spirits, are fools in my eyes. They're just channeling demons, just ignorantly. You know,
Well, I
that's the way I see it.
you know what that reminds me of, and I can't say it, and I can't say it because I'll get a strike. Everybody out there can visualize what I cannot say, but there's a certain. We'll just use the keyword Nephilim, but everybody takes a Nephilim to ward off the Nephilim, right? But like the people who are always doing that, who are always sipping on the juice, they're always the ones that, like, it validates their worldview. You know what I'm saying? Like it's proof that they need to keep doing it because they keep getting X, Y, and Z. I'm being very abstract here. It's not to trigger anything, but you know what I'm talking about. So to me, like, the idea that they would be dressing like that to ward off these evil spirits, it's validated by the fact that they probably keep encountering them, right? So I'm dressing like this and doing this to ward them off, but it's actually getting their gaze and their attention. It's almost like the idea of putting up pumpkins, a jack-o'-lantern, I should say, for Halloween, and it was that's the same idea, that you're doing that to stave off the spirits, but actually it's actually attracting their gaze, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, another example of this, and it is specifically the practice of warding away. So this is the kukri in Bulgaria, and it comes in many forms, as you can see. The wild hairy beast is one of them, but also these fractal jester monsters is another one that seems very, very, very common with it. And these conical hats is also common with. Look, this is like a beast man. It's got the legs of a satyr, but the body of a human with an elongated skull. Basically, these are remnant echoes of Nephilim. But if we go to, for example, the Fighter Con, I think that's how it's pronounced, the Fighter Con Spirit Festival. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, here it is. The Fighter Con. Yeah, I missed the H out. So this is the country eludes me right now. Let me just quickly figure it out. Thailand. So this is a ghost festival in Thailand where they are specifically dressing like ghosts or the spirits of the dead, ancestor spirits. And it's said that when Buddha came to their village, the spirits of the dead rose with him or something like that, and he had and basically, in order to not be affected by it, the villagers dressed like the demons, so the demons didn't recognize that they were humans, so they left them alone. Okay, so now this is this yearly festival where they parade through the streets dressed like wide-grinned, sharp-toothed jester demon monsters with multicolored fractaled ribboned patterned clothing. Okay, look at these things. And they all have their own troops and stylistic ways of doing it, but these are monstrous Nephilim pale-skinned, sharp-toothed, wide-grinned clown monsters by any standards, you know what I mean? And this is what they believe the spirits looked like. And they have these fractaled psychedelic clothing on because they represent the spirits which are trapped in the fractaled psychedelic astral DMT realm. And everything about this costume is a representative of the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim. Now, the Nephilim obviously were half serpentine, flying fiery serpents and half human. This is what you get. You get something that looks like this as a result. You don't get the stereotypical, really hench Conan the Barbarian, tanned, long brown-haired looking monster giant that looks pretty human. You get this psychedelic, serpent-human, monstrous, wide-grinning hybrid thing instead. This is what you get when you mix a dragon with a human. You get this looking thing. And this is what we see everywhere. I mean, let's look at, for example, Medusa or a Gorgon in Greek mythology. Now, it depends what story you want to go off, but typically speaking, Medusa is the offspring of Typhon, which is a sea god, a serpent sea god, and Echidna, which is the mother of monsters. She's the one who birthed many monsters. But Echidna is basically a siren, is a human woman who's become like a Nephilim, as is explained in Enoch. The women who mated with the fallen angels became sirens. So Echidna is just that. It's also an animal in Australia, but we're not doing that. So Echidna in Greek mythology is this thing, this serpent woman hybrid monster thing. So this is, I believe, this is one of the original daughters of Cain who mated with the Watchers. I believe she was turned into a siren, so she was turned into this monster. She mated with, I think it was Typhon, Typhon and Echidna. Yeah, these two hybrid monsters. So this may be another fallen angel watcher of some kind, but of the sea, mating with Echidna and created the Gorgons. Now, Gorgons, you would think Medusa is that serpent woman with snakes for hair, right? That's the typical view. Everyone thinks of Medusa as looking like this. That's not what any early artistic depiction of Medusa looked like. She actually looked more like this. This is what a Gorgon looks like, more typically speaking. The hair was dreadlocks, with a big wide grin and the tongue sticking out. It wasn't serpents for hair. The serpent for hair thing is a really modern Hollywood thing. You know, maybe some artwork, coming out of maybe into the Romantic period or the Renaissance period, sure. But early depictions of Gorgons looked like this on the right. Can you see? Not this on the left. And it's akin to something similar to what you see in... This is Kali with the tongue sticking out in India. This is the Rakshasa demons of India. It's the same visage, you know what I mean? It's the same thing. Traditionally, it was quite human looking, but it had angel's wings because it was part divine, had a wide, horrible grin. And the early colours of these things was pale white skin with red lips. So like a clown. And you can find, I'm trying to find old depictions of this. So a Gorgon...
I had to post that there, Miley Cyrus, too, with the tongue. I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah, that too. Gorgon stone artwork. Let's see if we can got anything here. Some of the older stuff. So this is the older stuff. This is what she would have been looked like in terms of color. Wide red grin, pale white skin. That's a clown. You know. Here we are again. Pale white skin, bright red hair, like a clown. The typical depiction of most Nephilim. Pale white skin, red hair, large serpentine glowing eyes, not human eyes in the slightest. Again, inherited from their parents. The history's there, and they all look the same. It's a shared cultural image of what the Gorgons look like. Pale skin, wild, crazy red hair, and that's the base of any clown. And that's where we get it from. Here's another excessive example: red hair, pale white skin. Not snakes for hair, red hair. That's what the Gorgon typically look like on most things. Now, get this. The Gorgonians, the Gorgon, I think it's called a Gorgonian, is a seal, which is one. No, that's never mind. Let's look up Athena and Gorgon.
I think that was the wrong search.
Yeah, so Athena wears... Typically, Athena's always depicted with a Gorgonian on her chest, which is the head of Medusa. Okay, it was given to her by Perseus, I think it was, after slaying Medusa. It was given to her as a gift, so there he is holding up Medusa's head. And he gave it to Athena, and she wears it as a pendant on her chest, as like protection. So Athena's always shown with the head of Medusa on her chest somewhere. Any depiction of her will show it, okay? But there is this particular early rendition here, and look how they decided to depict the Gorgon in this particular rendition. Looks just like a clown.
Yeah.
With red hair as today's standards. Because the clown is modeled off of these things that we have today. The Freemasons who love Greek mythology, you know, and know all about these things, have seen this artwork, and they have modeled, when they molded the clown, they modeled it after images like this. Again, the Gorgon, a serpent-human hybrid created by a siren, a daughter of Cain, mixing with a serpent sea god. of some kind, a Nephilim by any standards. The Nephilim did truly look like clowns. They just didn't call them that, and here's another example. And they all have, across every culture, they have their own stylistic way of depicting them. So I thought that was a bit of fun for you. Maybe we can end on that, but there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to, Paul, I am impressed, as if that means anything to you, but you blew my mind. That was incredible. I was just sitting here going, I was like, you're showing me all this stuff. And it's so one of the I had asked you, and I'll end on this. I asked you at the beginning, how do you determine what truth is? And so for me, and this is where I would take your research and I would go, this helps. This is basically like my idea of how I pursue the truth, right? So because I believe the Bible is true, right? That's the foundation, right? The first question was, what is truth? And then the second is how do you pursue truth from there? So if I'm using the Bible as a springboard, and as it was mentioned, that the Bible exposes all of these things. All these world cultures have these, the Nephilim, the giants, as you would say, the Nephilim are clowns, the Tower of Babel, the deluge, the incursion, all these different things. But the Bible is the one that exposes it, right? So now I've changed my opinion many, many times. I tell people all the time, I'm probably wrong this very moment. I mean, I change my opinion so many times, but every single time, the goal is every time is to take the Bible more literally, right? To harness that vision and get a bigger peripheral vision and take all these different pieces and connect and go, wow, that makes sense, right? And so, yeah, for me, it's when you can put something together like that, and it all makes sense. Like you could take it through history, you could show it modern. For me, I totally get it. You want to separate it from the MK research, but for me, it makes sense in that the short season beforehand, the Watchers, everything, and I think it's brilliant. I think that's some brilliant research that for me So for me, I'm sorry, I don't mean it. The only time I backtrack. There's been times where I backtrack, where I go like, yeah, I'm sorry, I took the wrong route here. And I start coming back. And it's when my vision starts getting darker and darker and darker, right? And everything starts becoming more confused. I'm like, how did I end up here in this marsh, right? This bog. And you have to backtrack. But when everything starts getting clear, I'm like, yes, this is right. This is pursue the truth. And I can't see any flaw in this. I mean, this is just like across the board, you've checked all the boxes. I think it's brilliant. Anyways, go ahead.
It's a tautology. It's one of those things that makes sense of a lot of things. So I may be talking about the way the Nephilim looked, but I do have to go into everything to explain why that is the case, as you've seen there. It's which I think why people like the theory so much, because it does teach them a lot of other things around the periphery of the point. And I think that's how I tackle most subjects. So you have the core theory. Now let's look at everything surrounding it to give context to the theory, and then we can understand the conspiracy thoroughly. And you don't have to take everything on board and believe every single piece, because we're trying to create, again, a holistic image that works. And sometimes things don't work, and we have to go back to the drawing board and bring it back together. And that's how I approach all my research. I take everything in, hold it up to scrutiny to the overarching theory, and then also I bring it back to, does it square with biblical history and theology? And most of the things I presented, I believe, do. And I think we can find answers for most of these things. And like you said, a lot of what my work does, and even with this Millennial Kingdom stuff, is showing me is that the Bible is literal about a lot of things. It's not all just metaphor and simile here and there. And I think we can safely take the Bible at its word on a lot of things, and it will hold up to scrutiny if you want to go and scrutinize and do the research and look into it for yourself. I mean, this whole millennial reign thing, like I said, for a lot of people, it's a faith issue. I think it affects the foundational belief systems, and they're scared to shake it up and maybe see things from a new perspective. But for me personally, I believe knowing that Jesus Christ has already come and reigned on earth has proven to me he wasn't a liar. And my faith is only stronger because of this. Because of this new revelation that, okay, so it maybe has already come. And like I said, it keeps making more and more sense. The more you go back to the word, the things he said start to make a lot more sense based on, the people standing here who won't taste death till they see me return in my kingdom, all this type of stuff. And there's hundreds of other quotes to back up this idea that he was being very immediate. So for me personally, it's only made me more excited and on fire for God in a way, more a stronger faith, less doubt, because I can see the evidences that he's come, he was here, it's real, this really did happen. And the evidences are that if you want to go and see them, and that's why I appreciate your work, because you have gone out there and compiled and looked at the histories and got the receipts, the black and white on ink on paper proves, that he was clearly here. It was documented. A lot of it's missing, which is suspect, and there's a conspiracy about all of this. But what we can piece together and infer from these other cultures, they did document his return. They just called him something else, or mythologized it in some way, and that's why I really appreciate a lot of your work, especially the whole stuff going on with this whole the Saxon mythology as well, in the Camelot and the red and white dragon. Me and Tony from God Rules channel, Sons of Thunder, were just talking about you yesterday. On my channel. And he really respects your work, and we were talking and we were like, oh, you know Noel and all these type of things, and he actually used your writings from your videos and from your channel to show me some history about what he's been thinking about as well and what's been going on. Because I thought, so there you go, your work has had an impact on a lot of people, and I personally think it's a shame that a lot of people give you a lot of stick for your choice in language here and there, but that's, we don't have to get into that, but I appreciate your work, and
I'll say quickly too on that point is that here at TUC, at the Unexpected Cosmology, we're a publisher. I mean, we put out a lot of books, and right now Pamela's in the chat. She is an amazing woman, and she is actually translating the entire Paleo Hebrew Torah. And then when she's done with that, she's already done a couple books on the Psalms, and then she's going to be working on the Gospels. But I point this out to people that we get really into the language here. And for me, there's one of the ways you can know you're among your own tribe, or one of the ways you can know you're not among your own tribe, is if you have to walk on eggshells or tiptoe, you're not amongst your own tribesmen. And that's, I could always see in the comments when people come in and they pretend like they're a fan of the cause, but you need to stop using the names. It's like, okay, clearly you don't actually know much about us or anything, because literally we are a publisher that focuses on the names. So I always find it, a surprising when people come in all offensive and all that kind of stuff in the groups. But yeah, you saw a little bit of that last week, and it happened.
I've seen more than enough. I'm keeping out of it, but I will talk to anybody and everybody, regardless of who's fighting who. It doesn't matter to me. I want to get to the bottom of this, and I'll talk to Noel. I'll talk to anybody about this, so it's fine for me, But I think your work's thorough, and you've definitely taught me a lot over the years as well. I've been watching your videos, for years too. I've been around. I may not have been a known entity, but I have been listening to a lot of your work for a long time.
Not a known entity, but all right. Well, thank you, Paul. That's a good place to end. It's been a couple hours. I loved you coming on. Thank you so much. And you definitely schooled me today. Showed me a lot of stuff. I will definitely have to be. I'll definitely have to be sourcing you on some of this stuff now. Every time this comes up, be like, well, this is what Paul says, and good stuff. All right. Thank you, everybody. I just want to say to everyone out there listening, this Friday, of course, tomorrow I'll be bringing on John Q, who is going to be looking at the Millennial Kingdom theory from a very controversial position, QAnon. And I want to hear him out on that. And so he'll be giving his perspective. And then, and of course, how that relates to the short season. And then Friday, everyone, I'm doing my Torah portions. Come on by, good old fashioned Bible study. But this is not your father's Bible study, of course. And we're going through the Torah. We're in Exodus right now. And then afterwards, I'm going through the book of Galatians, and a line for line. And this, so everyone come on out for that. Thank you, Paul. I'll be ending it. Shalom, everybody.
Thank you.